present a detailed and well-researched study of the fourth verse of Part 4 of Prathampodasha, Rasayankhand, of Rasaratnakara by Sri Nityanand Siddha. Today, we are absolutely decoding a highly specific, foundational injunction that sets the stage for everything that follows in this fascinating text.
So, here's our roadmap for this explainer. First, we'll explore the original text of the fourth verse. Then, we'll move on to its overarching themes and summarize what it's really getting at. After that, we'll break down the specific substances and processes involved, cross-reference them with other classical texts, put them through a modern scientific review, and finally, look at where future research might take us.
All right, Section 1, let's get right into the text itself. When looking at the actual source manuscript of the Prathamopadesh, specifically that lower section under the heading Rasayana Sevanasya Purvakarma, you'll find the exact location of this fourth verse. It sits right at the threshold of the text's practical alchemical instructions. Think of it as a totally non-negotiable gateway. The original Sanskrit script, along with its Roman transliteration, reads Shubha Mangala Divase Vamane Richane Krite, Tato Vishesha Yujartham Ketaki Stanajam Dravam. Now we're focusing heavily on the concepts of auspicious timing, physical cleansing, and the application of botanical extracts here. It's a super compact verse, but man, it carries an immense amount of procedural weight. If we break down the complex linguistic syntax, the envy and the semantics, the text translates to a very unambiguous English meaning. On an auspicious day, after performing therapeutic vomiting and purgation, one should specially utilize the extracted liquid of the Ketaki plant. The narrator here is laying down a strict protocol for bodily purification prior to any alchemical treatment. There is absolutely no room for interpretation. It's a strict prerequisite. Okay, moving on to Section 2. Let's unpack the themes and summarize this whole dialogue. The central, undeniable theme of this verse is Purvakarma, which translates directly to preparatory action. The narrator strongly emphasizes that before any heavy metals, minerals, or highly potent medicines can be introduced to transform the body, the physical vessel itself must first be entirely emptied and purified. It's like preparing a canvas, right? You literally cannot paint a masterpiece on a canvas that is already covered in dirt and old paint. The body has to be a blank slate. Let's jump into Section 3 and look at the exact substances, herbs, and processes that make up this blank slate. The major actions and substances explicitly commanded by Srini Nayatanath Siddha form a very specific three-step sequence. First, we have two active biological processes, Vamana and Rachana. And finally, the application of a specific botanical substance, the Ketaki plant extract. Let's break each of these down a bit more. So first, we have Vamana, which is therapeutic emesis, or controlled vomiting, and Rachana, which is therapeutic purgation. In their original classical meaning, these are aggressive gastrointestinal cleansing techniques. Historically and philosophically, Vamana and Rachana were not just medical treatments for a stomach ache, They were deeply symbolic and metaphysical acts of clearing out old, stagnant impurities, what classical Ayurveda would call vitiated doshas. The goal here was nothing short of preparing the mortal body for physical immortality, rejuvenation, and what the texts call deha siddhi, or bodily perfection. Following this intense physical cleansing, the verse specifies the use of Ketaki liquid. Botanically, that's Pandanus odifera. Its classical meaning within this context implies a cooling, stabilizing post-purification treatment. Historically, it was believed to prepare the now empty digestive tract to safely receive some pretty harsh alchemical medicines. But we really need to evaluate how this botanical was utilized. While traditional texts praise its ability to aid in the absorption of processed metals, we absolutely must state that modern science does not confirm these specific heavy metal synthesizing claims. All right, Section 4. Let's see how this ties into other classical texts. The requirement of Panchakarma-style purification before administering Rasayana is definitely not a concept unique to Nityanand Siddha. This exact principle is strictly echoed in much earlier classical medical texts. For instance, you'll find parallel injunctions against rejuvenation without prior cleansing, detailed specifically in the Charaka Samhita Chikitsastana Chapter 1 and the Sushruta Samhita Chikitsastana Chapter 27, as well as the Ashtanga Hridaya. In all of these foundational texts, attempting rejuvenation therapy without prior cleansing is explicitly warned against. It's often compared to trying to dye a dirty cloth. It just doesn't work. Furthermore, this is completely consistent across the specialized alchemical literature too. Similar principles of strict physical preparation before the consumption of mercury or complex mineral compounds can be cross-referenced across major later alchemical treatises. Texts like the Rasayankhand in Chapter 2, the Ayurveda Prakash in Chapter 1, and the Rasataryankhand and Taranga 2 all maintain this rigid protocol. So verse 4 of the Rasaratnakara is essentially serving as a direct anchor to a widely accepted pan-historic Indian medical consensus.
Now for Section 5. Let's put all of this under a modern scientific review. Comparing these paradigms, we see a totally fascinating translation of concepts. While classical claims view Vamana and Rachana as metaphysical and humoral cleansing, modern pharmaceutical science views gastrointestinal clearing quite differently. Modern science sees this as a mechanical mechanism that drastically alters drug absorption, gut flora, and bioavailability. By emptying the stomach and intestines, you are literally removing competitive barriers to drug absorption. I should definitely note, however, that the highly aggressive purgation described historically is rarely recommended in modern clinical practice today, mostly due to risks of dehydration and electrolyte imbalance. Looking back at the Ketaki plant, historical beliefs assigned it potent alchemical stabilizing properties, essentially acting as a buffer for the intense metallurgical medicines that were to follow. But let's look at the actual evidence here. We have to clearly state that modern toxicology and pharmacology simply do not confirm these specific, miraculous heavy metal synthesizing claims. While Ketaki might actually have mild anti-inflammatory or cooling properties, its ability to safely integrate toxic metals into the human body is categorized by modern science as entirely unproven. When we view this through the lens of modern chemistry and materials science, the ancient preparation of the body to receive metallic compounds, what they called Rasa Shastra, is really a double-edged sword. It is undeniably fascinating that ancient scholars recognize the need to alter the body's internal environment to maximize the uptake of these complex compounds. Yet, from a modern toxicology perspective, introducing processed heavy metals into an aggressively purged human digestive tract represents a highly significant toxicological risk. It's something that requires rigorous, modern, evidence-based scrutiny before any real-world application. And finally, Section 6. Let's conclude and talk about future research. To summarize our deep dive into verse 4, its historical significance lies in its uncompromising, crystal-clear stance that bodily transformation requires aggressive preparation. You simply cannot skip the purvakarma. Its modern significance, however, serves as an incredible case study in ancient pharmacology. It shows us an early, albeit extreme, understanding of bioavailability and gastrointestinal manipulation. For those of you wanting to review the modern clinical perspectives on these topics, I highly recommend jumping onto PubMed or Google Scholar. Try using keywords like Ayurvedic pharmacokinetics, Panchakarma bioavailability, and look for review articles with DOIs focusing on Rasa Shastra toxicology. Ultimately, studying texts like the Rasaratnakara shouldn't just be an exercise in history. We must ask, how can modern nanotechnology and pharmaceutical science further investigate the physiological changes triggered by these ancient preparatory acts? Could the concept of clearing the gut before administering highly targeted, perhaps nanoscale therapies, actually hold relevance today? What actual secrets of bioavailability might still be hidden within the verses of Sri Nityanand Siddha, just waiting for modern science to properly translate them? It's a fascinating frontier for sure, and I hope this explainer has given you a powerful new framework for looking at these ancient texts. Keep questioning and keep learning.